Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm very excited to have Jeff Mask joining us. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you very much. So happy to be here. Hello, everybody.
Yes, and Jeff has graciously waited as we had some technical issues, but we are live and recording now. So I'm really excited for this. I saw you speak, Jeff, as we were just chatting a couple of minutes ago at an event in Arizona several months back, and thought just again you'd be great to come on the podcast here and share some of your experiences and your framework and kind of how you've gone about building your business. For those who aren't familiar with you and your work, so you are the CEO of Mask Principles, so elite executive coaching, and your clients include organizations like the U.S. military, digital marketer, NP Worldwide, and a whole bunch of others. I want to get into how consultants can build their business while increasing their happiness, their freedom, all of that good stuff. But before we do that, let's go back in time. I'd love for you to just share what were you doing before you got into the world of coaching and consulting.
Yeah, funny enough, in my mind, I was already doing it, and I'll tell you a little bit what I mean by that. To answer your question quickly and simply, I was building software companies. But 15 years previous, I was introduced to the world of coaching, in particular coaching CEOs, as the CEO that I was working with had hired a private coach. And I saw the transformation in him right away. Mm-hmm. And I thought, and in fact, it was my brother. And he came back from this, the CEO was my brother, not the coach, just to be clear. He came back from his first coaching session and I could see his countenance was different. He was more on fire, had more conviction, more confidence. And I said, where'd you just come from? And he said, I just had my first coaching session. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. And then I looked at him and I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And he, you have kind of those light bulb moments and lightning bolt moments simultaneously. That's what it was for me. And he looked at me and he, having known me as well as he does, he said, you're right. You're built for this. But I said, in time, I want to build businesses. I want to learn how to operate businesses from the trenches so that when I coach, it's more from application and theory, not just theory. So that's the long answer to my question. As I was building other companies and leading people, I did it from a frame of, if I were coaching you, then what? And if I weren't here, how would you be strong on your own 2 feet versus relying on quote unquote the leader? So that's a longer answer to the question.
Yeah. And so as you were in the trenches, right, a leader inside of a growing organization, as many of listeners have been in that place, you're moving up the executive ranks, your salary is doing well, you got the benefits, you have all the stuff that kind of lifestyle can provide. What was going on, or what was kind of the impetus or the turning point when you decide, okay, now I'm ready to go off and actually build my own business and start doing the coaching and so forth work?
That's a good question. I don't think you're ever ready. Honestly, and if people are listening saying, I'll do it when I'm ready, you're going to fast forward a year, 5 years, 10 years, and still tell yourself you're not ready. So what happened with me was we were relocating from a location in Arizona up to Utah, another software company. And in order to do so, there was a particular place where I was going to reside that I thought, how do I make sure that works financially? I don't know if this, I was kind of doing all the puzzle pieces and I thought, what if when I start this new tech company, I'll coach on the side in the morning before I go into the office and just kind of get started that way. Made sure I cleared that with the CEO of the new company. He was all for it. He's an entrepreneur himself. And so I started doing that for about a year and a half. So I coached simultaneously while building a separate software company. And I worked, 5-10 hours a week, if that, all on off hours that weren't part of my normal work routine until, drumroll, I got fired. So I had a plan, a safe, natural plan with about 18 to 24 months of building this other software company, right, that I would then, jump on my own 2 feet and run. There were other plans. And, what happened, just for those that are intrigued, we grew that company so fast that we actually didn't grow the infrastructure and the cost structure as effective as we could. And our systems were reporting, our revenues were great. And they were. The problem was our cash wasn't resembling the same trajectory. We had systems issues, we had refunds, credits going on, and all kinds of holes. And we had more expenses than we realized. that weren't compensated with the income that we thought we had. So I got let go. So I kind of created my own problem, which was perfect because it gave me just the shove that I needed to say, all right, here we go. So I had a few clients at the time and I thought, I love what I'm doing anyway. My plan was to jump in anyway. So it was a forcing function to just say all in no matter what. So that was my unique story. But the short answer is I wasn't ready. And I don't think you ever really are until you just go for it.
Yeah, so true. I want to dig deeper into your business and how you create it and what you're doing today. But before we do that, on your website, you state that you are a cancer survivor.
Yeah.
And I have a few questions around that. But the first is, why put that on your website? Why be vulnerable? Why so many people have challenges going on in their life, whether it's health or relationships or just something else, but they don't share it because they think it may not be a good thing to do professionally, quote unquote, air quotes. Why do you share that?
Because I try to debunk old school leadership and old school facade of business ownership. I think too often we like to put on the pretty face. We like to put on a show and make everything look great, that I've got it all figured out and therefore you should trust me. I believe in the last 20 years, especially in the last 2 years, leadership has evolved dramatically, thankfully. And vulnerability is more courage and strength and less of a weakness. And so I just think humanity in leadership, humanity in business is super powerful. I believe humans connect to humans. And too often we have our own insecurities, our own imposter syndrome that's just going crazy, only exacerbated by people projecting perfection. Right. And that they've got it all figured out. Nobody has it figured out. And that's just fine. So that's why I just think there's a humanity. Also, it was a rude awakening for me to really live into my purpose. And if I was given a second chance at life, which I was, then what am I doing with that? And so it's part of my story.
When was that? Like when were you actually, like where were you in your career? What stage when you had cancer?
Yeah, I was at a Fortune 50 company. I was in Southern California. I had 2 kids at the time. I'd been married for about 6 years or so. And just a random checkup. Actually, I went to the doctor to get a flu shot because my young daughter, who is a year old, had a really bad breathing issue. So we all got flu shots just to protect her. Right. And just in a random checkup, he said, let's just do a skin test. And so lo and behold, found melanoma on my lower left back. And I had no idea what melanoma was at the time. I thought, carcinoma, melanoma, they sound the same. And he's like, no. Melanoma is the silent killer of men your age. And so this was 2006 at the time. And I was working, like I said, for a large corporation. I saw myself being there for my life. That was my career. I was really excited about it. I had progressed and been promoted and was doing some fun things in my career, and just had this massive brick wall awakening of what are you really doing? And what does purpose mean to you and why are you on this planet? So it was a really great moment for me. Sounds bizarre. Now I can say it was great. In the time, It wasn't so great. It was pretty bleak and pretty difficult, but yeah, it woke me up and helped me realize what I think there's a bigger purpose that I can serve, and I need to find that.
When you were going through all that, is there anything? I mean, it sounds like you learned a lot from it. You said it kind of helped you to discover your purpose and make sure that things were aligned. Mm-hmm. For those who are joining us right now, who may be in a similar situation, maybe it's not cancer, but it's something that is a very strong trauma that they weren't expecting, or whatever reason they are where they are, but there's something going on in their life right now. What did you take from that experience? Looking back, what might could you offer to say, hey, if you're going through a really tough time right now, health or otherwise, here are the things that I did that I would recommend. Like, what would you tell a friend that might help to get them out of that place or improve where they are?
Yeah, this is where spirituality for me is important, and it's not for everybody. So I don't want to put this blanket statement on all, but I believe believing in a higher power helps you determine what is the bigger picture, what's your purpose on this earth, and how can you play a part in that. That helped me a lot. But even if you aren't spiritual, there's a great thinking that I've learned over the years, and this thought that I've said over and over and over, and that is the difference between a trial and a blessing in our lives is our application of time. So however much we want time to teach us, if you think about it, right now, when you're in the throes of a trial and it's super hard, super dark, super difficult, you hear that and you want to punch someone in the face. It's like, don't tell me this is a blessing, right? But if you rewind back to the hardest parts of your life, difficult moments that you would never wish on anyone, you can look at where you've become better, where you've grown, how you have received more empathy, more wisdom, whatever it is, it's now a blessing. And so again, the only difference between the trials that we go through and our blessings is our application of time. And so I learned the faster you can concentrate time and start to see the blessing in the trial, the more you can become stronger in the moment faster versus wallowing in your misery, being frustrated. Now there's time and space for that. I'm not saying you snap out of it. I'm just saying, if you're there for months and years and decades, you have a choice to look at where the good is and to be a champion from that versus a victim. So I would say that those are two things that really helped me and continue to help me as I look at any obstacle or issue in my life. And yes, I still apply them. And yes, I still have issues, right? We all do. And I like to be able to say, all right, here's another time to prove my mantra. Where's the blessing in this trial? Because right now I'm not seeing it, right?
Yeah.
And just kind of work myself through that process.
I mean, that's such a powerful concept, this one around how you view time, your relationship with time. I think so often as entrepreneurs and business owners, we're expecting results instantly. We become impatient, and we don't have that longer time horizon. So I love kind of the way to play with that you just described.
Yeah.
I'll take a hard right turn now and take us from all of that was going on in your life. And so great that, you were able to navigate out of that and be healthy and beat cancer. So that's wonderful. When you decided to start running your coaching consulting business, what did you do, or where did you go to get those first few clients? It sounds like you had some clients even while you were working your full-time job. Where did those first few clients come from?
Great question. My network of people I've worked with over the last 20 years. So it was great. I love to be able to, in every interaction with an individual, treat it as if it's a long-term, lifelong relationship versus a transaction. Just a great mantra and a great way to live versus being selfish and being really intrinsically motivated. So that helped me over the years. And then when it was time to say, I'm going to coach, I just went to social media and posted on Facebook and LinkedIn, I think Instagram as well. And just said, hey, it's time. Here's what I'm doing. Here's why. And I had all sorts of raging doubts, right? As most do. It's like, who am I to do this? And I knew I needed to coach CEOs because CEOs have the greatest impact on culture than anybody else, positive or negative. And I had seen positive and negative results from different CEOs. And I thought, man, I really want to help more people. And working with CEOs is the key. But I've never been a CEO. Who am I to do that, right? How all the raging doubts and insecurities would just come in. And I think that's totally normal and natural. But I had to push past those. I had to figure out who is my laser target focused customer. Like if I'm going to get really clear, who do I serve really well? And I did some thought work before that, wrote some stuff down to get my bullseye. I'm a big believer in direct targeting versus just, spray and pray and hope you just find someone. The more direct, the better. And just posted on social media, and a few people reached out, and the rest is history. And so even today, I don't do any direct marketing. I don't, not doing any paid ads. It's all referral, all word of mouth. It's purposely how I built the brand and the premium brand that I'm trying to build to make sure that it's not just anyone. It's a very select process with a select type of individual that they find me and it works. So that's how it started.
Yeah, no, you're creating all kinds of questions that I want to dig deeper into. So you mentioned that you were wrestling with that kind of limiting belief of, hey, I've never been a CEO yet. I want to serve CEOs. Let's just start there. How did you overcome that? How did you convince yourself that, hey, like I can actually add some value here, even though I've never been a CEO myself?
Because I had operated in enough businesses and seen the pros and the cons and the good and the bad. And I knew enough frameworks to know, doesn't matter if I've been a CEO or not, I know what works and I know what doesn't. And I've worked from Fortune 50 to venture-backed firms to early startup to a little bit more mature startup. And so I've been around enough to know my business acumen is strong enough, my experience is strong enough, My conviction is strong enough. And the greatest thing was I was like, as bizarre as this sounds, I was spiritually motivated. I felt like there was a deeper purpose to what I was doing, back to my spirituality that I shared before, that I felt like, you know what? I know this will bless people's lives, not only the CEOs and their families, but all the people that they influence, which is almost infinite. You know, it's hard to be able to track that. And because I feel so passionately about making work life better, about getting the best results out of people and having them be really thrilled when they get home versus just completely drained, it pushed me through. So the simplest form is I had to be selfless and not selfish. The more insecure I was, the more I was worried about myself. And what gave me the confidence was to think, I know I can bless these people's lives. It's about them, not about me. Get over yourself and go for it.
Yeah, love that. The other thing I want to ask you about is referrals. So you mentioned that you don't do any marketing. Your business comes from the work that you do and the people that you work with.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you do when it comes to referrals that you feel is really beneficial in the way that you coach, in the way that you maybe ask for referrals? Just very specifically, like around referrals, what do you feel influences and is a best practice to help you to generate these referrals?
Yeah, great question. It's getting back to my target client of who I serve the best and painting that picture to my clients. Now, you would think obviously, well, of course they know because they are who they are. They, you know, I'm coaching them, so therefore of course they know other people, but they may not know that I'm that disciplined on who I focus on. So I'll say, you know, sometimes when they say stuff like, man, this session rocked my world. I cannot believe how I was thinking this way. Now I'm this way. It's completely changing the trajectory of my life and my business. Thank you. You know, when they have that euphoric moment, when they have that tangible value, it's a great natural moment to say, so glad you're feeling that. Who else do you know that is and I tell them a CEO who bump, and go through 3 or 4, you know, different criteria that could also say the same thing and benefit from this, and let it be there. That's it. Yeah. I actually don't ask it very much. I don't know why I don't, now that I think about it. Now because I'm at capacity, that's actually why I don't. But I let the natural value that they're feeling be the catalyst to then ask the question. I also say, as I'm coaching clients, especially clients that things are really going well, I'll tell them, you know, 3 months into it or what have you, or when things are great, I'll just say, just so you're aware of my intention. My intention is to coach with you for years and years to come as you build and scale your business, so that as new problems arise, we partner together and you can feel totally confident to tackle them. Now, you're not obligated to do that. And it's up to me to add the value that's so massive and so clear that it's a no-brainer for you to do that. That gets in their mind and they realize, wow, this guy's like, he really wants me to succeed. Now, some consultants hear that and say, Jeff, that's a totally bad way to do it. I totally disagree. And I understand that. And what they say is, what you're doing is creating a conditional dependency and relationship on that CEO and you, and that's actually hurting them and inhibiting them. To that counter, I counter and say, you're assuming that they're going to be the same person a year from now, and their business is going to be the same in that argument, and it's not. The business is different. They're going to come across new problems. They're going to come across the new scale of, how do I go from 30 million to 100 million? How do I go from 100 million to 1 billion? I've never done that before. It's different. Right. Yes, I can give them frameworks and coaching tips and ways to coach themselves. And when big old massive roadblocks like that come, it's nice to have someone in your corner. So to each their own. You know, I'm not saying it's the best way or the only way. It's the way that works for me. So, and naturally, the byproduct of that is referrals, because they know I'm in it for the long haul with these people. I really want their success to come to fruition, because when they win, I win, and it feels great. So right. Longer answer, but there you go.
It's a great perspective. Getting a little bit deeper into your actual business, you mentioned currently you're at capacity, right? Which is something that so many consultants and executive coaches and so forth dream of and are working towards. How has your pricing strategy shifted over the years, especially as you've seen increased demand?
That is such a genius question, because the pricing strategy and capacity are directly correlated in a very potentially atypical way. So what a lot of people feel, I've found, is that if they price at a at a price point that isn't a major gate, meaning it's more open for many people. So I'm pricing lower, albeit capacity faster. I've actually found the opposite to be true. And so I purposely have priced it at a premium, in my definition of premium, that purposely positions it to cater to a select number of people. So again, back to laser targeting and laser focus. So I found that when you price at a premium, you, one, don't need as many clients. Two, therefore can be at capacity faster. And three, can create a little bit of exclusivity of, I'll be ready when I can be ready. But if I'm always available to everyone all the time, then the value and the perceived value is a little bit less. And so I'll be super transparent and share my pricing. So I started at $2,500 per month at the base level. That's now increased above $3,000 a month at the base level, all the way up to $15,000 a month, depending on what they consume and what we're doing together. And that way I got behind it and said, all right, if I'm going to build this, I want to build it not at the expense of my family. I want to build this so that I can still be a loving husband with time and an awesome father who's there when they're, getting ready for school and they need carpool and they just need a father figure. I don't want to be, quote unquote, so busy building my business that now they don't remember who I am. And that was a great discipline that I instilled right in the beginning to create that natural constraint to say, all right, if I'm going to be here with my family and I'm going to price, then I need to price at a higher premium so that I can have the luxury of time. And that's where it all came together in a really powerful way so that I can be present. And now my 16-year-old daughter says stuff like, it's weird when I come home from school now and you're not here. Whereas I remember before you were never here because you were, building these other businesses and you wouldn't go home till 6 or 7 and we wouldn't really see you. Now you're always here. And when you're not, it's kind of weird. And I was like, so define weird as a 16-year-old. Does that mean you miss me? Is that what you're saying? And she's like, I would never say that, but we kind of played with it. But the point was she felt it. And they know that my presence is different. And I just chalked that up as a massive internal win. I was like, yes, if teenagers can say that, we're good.
Jeff, that you instilled that early on. Was that like even at the start, like has your pricing changed over the years or is it pretty much remained okay? Because I know many consultants have, they think as I increase my experience and I'm seeing more results and I'm working with more clients and I have more case studies, then I'll increase my fees. But it sounds like you were very intentional from the start. This is how I'm going to price it. How did you arrive? I mean, at that price point, you mentioned that it ranges anywhere from about $3,000 a month to $15,000 a month that clients pay. How did you decide that would be kind of the initial pricing? And then what I'd love to hear is what's the difference between, let's say, a $3,000 per month engagement and a $15,000 per month engagement?
Yeah, great questions. So I arrived, first of all, a lot of pricing I found, there's a lot of deep psychology that goes on with pricing, namely around our self-worth as consultants. And very often when we're not able to price at a certain level, we either A, don't have confidence in our own skills, or B, have issues with money. And we view money as something that's evil and that can, ruin people's souls, which it can, if your heart is set on money. So I had to get clear first on my value and what I could bring. And I had to do an ROI analysis and thought, if I were CEO, what would I need to see? What would be worth it for me in order to invest X? What return would I need to see? So I did my own analyses. And then I also got clear on my own relationship with money. What was the purpose of building a business? Was it to make $1 billion and drive Bugattis and Lamborghinis and look awesome? No, it wasn't. It was to do X, Y, and Z. I knew what my purposes were with that. Therefore, I had a really clear, confident conscience on this is why I'm building wealth, period. And I embraced that. But, being raised the youngest of 6 by a school teacher dad who's amazing, wealth and money was not in abundance in our home. And so there's some scarce thinking that I had acquired over the years around money that I had to work on and get more at peace with my relationship with money. Once I did that, we were set. And so I did a few analyses in that regard to get to the pricing that I wanted to get to. Now to answer your other question or other part of that, I look at growth and development, and you can do there are different studies that are out there that show what percentage of your gross income should you be reinvesting back in the business in learning and development. So that's another analysis that you can look at. So I triangulated with a few things. And then I just had to look in the mirror and say, can I boldly, confidently say, here's the investment, and not flinch and not say, but if you do it by Tuesday, I'll discount it. No flinching, no discounting, no disclaimers, nothing. Just confidently say, here it is, and smile. And very often people would say, that's a ton. And how you respond to that is everything. And what I would say, I would smile right back at them and say, that's relative of who you're talking to. I think it's actually a bargain. And they just puts it right back on them. They're like, whoa. And then they say, well, what do you mean? And then we talk about, well, what is the value of you doing X, Y, and Z? What is the value of building your leadership bench so that they're more capable and they will level you up to be able to work on the vision? What price tag do you put on that? And what are you currently investing to do that? So sales and marketing skills come in really handy and are critical. And if anyone's listening going, but I just hate selling, then continue to price it at a low premium and be frustrated that you don't have enough time. You've got to just embrace your relationship with sales and see that it truly is serving when you're blessing them to help them solve a problem and to actually accomplish a goal that they need, versus money is bad and sales is icky and it's horrible. It can be, right, but it's totally how we think about it. Yeah. So you can tell I get a little passionate about this subject.
Yeah. And I guess the other part of that is the difference between, let's say, a $3,000 and a $15,000 per month engagement. Is that is that the amount of time that you're working with them, or
sorry, I got so excited about my tangent that I forgot that second part of the question. Yeah, it's a combination of a few things. It is a time investment, both sides. It's also where I bridge the gap between one-on-one coaching and actual consulting, where I'll do some strategic consulting. I'll also, very often at that higher level, I'll be coaching members of their executive team as well. So it's more than just the CEO, whereas the first couple levels are just focused on the CEO. The top two levels are more around the broader picture, either the executive team, sometimes the entire leadership team. You know, any people leader will do intensive leadership development exercises and curriculum that I've created over the years that really help instill sustainable growth, because I've learned the hard way, if you don't proactively and intentionally build leadership within your business, you will stunt your growth. There'll come a time where you just can't take on the new opportunity, the new problem to solve, because your leadership bench isn't deep enough, and the leaders that are currently there are already at max. You've got to always be building them, and that's the ROI for the higher levels. They see that, and they know they don't want to get in their own way.
Right. The work that you do, when you kind of look across all the different leaders, CEOs that you've worked with over the years, is there a tendency or a common, whether it's a limiting belief or just an area that people, like the majority of the clients you work with are challenged by, or they get stuck at? Like, is there, this happens all the time. Like, there might be a top 10, or I'm looking for, is there a top 1 or 2 things that you feel is typically applicable to leaders?
Yes, 100%. The answer came right to me right when you asked the question. To give a little bit of background before I answer the question, the clients that I coach, I purposely don't focus on one industry, nor one business size, because what I coach is universally applicable across the board. Though the threshold is roughly about 5 million in annual revenue. That's about the lowest that I'll coach, because the problems that I help solve start to show up at that level.
Sure.
And so I coach from 5 million to literally the highest grossing business that I coach is 70 billion with a B, publicly traded. So private, public, venture-backed, bootstrapped, all the above, from technology to marketing to healthcare to automotive to education to mining to, it's so diverse. The reason why I'm sharing that is because the patterns are still the same. And back to your question. And so the number one thing that I see in CEOs and leaders in general is trying to understand their relationship with fear. And very often what drives human beings, especially high performers, is 1 or 2 faces of fear, either fear of failure or fear of not being enough or not being liked.
Mm.
Those are the roots of almost everything that we're working on. And I can hear it all the time in their language. I can see it in their strategies. I can see what they're trying to put together just to make sure that this doesn't fail. Because if I fail, then it defines X, Y, and Z. And now all of a sudden I'm this. And just getting, one, the awareness of our fear, and two, a really healthy relationship with our fear. When we can do that, the sky's the limit. But that is the number one limiting belief.
And is there a way for those that are listening right now who may not, maybe they're not at 5 million yet, so they're not going to be an ideal client for you, so they can't reach out and engage. But is there a way to self-analyze this, or to become more self-aware? Like, what are some steps, if you feel that they exist, that somebody could do to identify their own fear and then be able to work through it more effectively?
Great question. Because when you hear fear, you think, I'm not scared. I've done this. And you kind of sometimes get nothing's going to stop me.
Right.
And so it's super subconscious. That's the hard part. So I really like this question, because it really helps you go, well, what would I do? Here's some of the exercises that I like to take clients through. A lot of it has to do with our own thinking and our own journaling. So when we go to particularly take a particular action, I like to do a 5 whys exercise, or a particular thought, or something that either is positive or negative, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Ask why 5 times. It's called the 5 whys. And why am I not doing that? And you answer that question, which is level 1. Then you ask why to that answer, which is level 2. Mm-hmm. Then you ask why to that answer, level 3, and so on until you get to 5 layers down. Very often it comes down to, if I'm honest, I'm scared that this might break. And so I got to do this to overcompensate, or try that. But we give ourselves these really flowery answers initially that sound good and look good and really protect our ego. But when we're really honest, all of that is ego protection in reality, the irony, and just being little kids. It's like, hope that people like me. I hope that I don't get ostracized the way I did in middle school, the way I did in grade school, whatever it is. We all have some deep scars that are there, and having that relationship is helpful. So asking the 5 whys on a limiting belief, an action we might take, or an action we did take, to understand what was the true motive behind that. I also coach on, when it comes to mindset, there are 3 M's underneath the mindset. Or sorry, I do mindset and then action, and there are 3 M's under action. Under action, I say, okay, here are the 3 M's. Figure out the motive of that action, which then enables you to take some movement, which is an element of faith that then enables you to get to sustained momentum. So motive, movement, momentum. Anytime we're going to take an action, I like to ask, what's my motive? Which is kind of a sister to the first exercise, right? But it might be a little bit easier to answer that, and you don't have to go 5 layers deep. But you've got to be really clear about that motive. Because if the motive is fear-based, if the motive is selfish, if the motive is about pride and ego, likely it's not going to have enough inertia behind it to build the sustainable momentum that we need. But if the motive on the other side is selfless, is pure, is out of love, is out of generosity, is out of abundance, very often when we take that movement, we'll have the sustained momentum. So those 2 things I help people through that are fun, that require a lot of brutal honesty and a ton of vulnerability. You can't fake this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I take that back. You can fake it, but it won't result into sustained momentum. You'll just find yourself in the back and in the same trench, back in the same problem and the same issue, and Groundhog's Day will be over and over and over again. So if you do the work well, authentically, humbly, and very vulnerably, you'll grow. If not, you'll sort of kind of grow, and you'll cheat the system, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I know we have to wrap up here shortly. Just 2 more quick questions. The first, you've developed your own framework, the MASK framework, right? So same letters as your last name, and people can learn more about it. We'll tell them where they can go to do that. But the question I have for you is, how important has developing a framework been for you when it comes to your marketing? I mean, I know your business comes from referrals, but just how do you feel about having a framework? Is that something that just makes it easier for you to do your work, or do you feel like that also provides appeal to clients? Just what are your overall thoughts about the importance or not importance of having a framework?
Yeah, my answer is probably biased, but I believe it's critical to have your own framework. I really do. It gives you the confidence you need. It gives clients a little different perception. And especially when it's universally applicable, it's just very powerful. So they get a lot of value from it. So I definitely think it's powerful. And back to marketing, because my principles are so clear, my mindset, action, spirituality, kindness pillars, and these principles actually are my marketing. They repel the right clients and they detract the wrong clients, which is great. Right. And so when they see that I'm coaching on spirituality and kindness, they're like, what kind of weirdo does that? And they leave. Perfect. Others go, that's intriguing. Why would you do that? And they lean in. Right. So that framework has been super powerful. And again, is really helpful in a $5 million business and a $70 billion business. Right. It's universally applicable regardless of the challenges we're going through. So I'm biased, but I think it's totally important.
Yeah. You keep kind of talking about the wide kind of range of different organizations that you can work with, different industries, different size. But what I think is important for everybody who's joining us just to keep in mind is that you still are very clear on the criteria that makes up an ideal client. Like, so you said CEO and a whole bunch of other things. So you've really narrowed and hit the bullseye on the criteria of the ideal client, but they can be in different industries and they can be in a different size as well.
Great distinction. Yes, there are 5 criteria that I have that I've got to have those right in the bullseye. I've learned the hard way. If they don't have them, they're just not the ideal customer for me, and they don't get the value that they want nor that I want them to receive. Right. So definitely.
Is there any one of those criteria that might sound a little bit weird to people?
Yes.
Like, can you share what it is?
100%. Yeah, totally. I'll tell you all 5.
Please.
So CEOs that are growing high growth companies. In other words, they have a need and a desire to improve and grow. They lead an executive team. They're trying to balance some semblance of life at home, whatever that is. And this is the weird one that people are like, they believe in a higher power. Back to my spirituality, right? I believe everything in life is spiritual. And so it doesn't have to be religion-based. It doesn't have to be I don't prescribe anything on anyone. What I'm looking for is, do you believe that there's something bigger than you? Because the root of all that is humility. When they believe in a higher power, there's a different level of humility, and therefore there's more coachability in them. And so those 5, those are the criteria that I look for. And some think I'm weird, and I just smile and say, you're absolutely right. I'm very weird.
That's so great and powerful that you are very clear on that criteria, because very often people aren't. Last question before we wrap up. Actually, I'll have one more quick question for you, but second to last. In the last 6 months, what is the best book that you have read or listened to? Could be fiction or nonfiction, something that you really enjoy.
Man, there's been a lot. Best that I've reread, probably Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. I love that one. So good on really dissecting how we converse and how we really lead people powerfully. I'd say that one for now. It's just been a great one that's been helpful for me and many others that I revisited and thought, this is a gem. It's a great one. I have a list of so many others, but it's just one. There you go.
And you mentioned reread. So do you tend to reread books, or do you tend to also read new books?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll reread those that are classics in my mind that are just powerful, because I believe great books can be readily applicable in the scenario that you're living in the moment. You may have read it a decade ago, but your life was different. Your experiences were different. And now you reread in today's setting, and now the lessons and the learnings and the frameworks are differently applied. And so I really like that principle, and also learning new books as well. And not just leadership, but biographies and spiritual books and other things that just kind of keep my brain active and staying sharp.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up here, but before we do, Jeff, I want to make sure that people can learn more about you and your work and everything that you have going on. Where's the best place for people to go and learn more?
If you want to learn about my business and about me, go to maskprinciples.com. All the information's there. And by the way, all the pricing and the structures there too. I'm super transparent. I don't hold it back. I just say, here it is. And some people say that's stupid, but to each their own. And then I also run a leadership podcast that I love, just helping new, emerging, and accidental leaders to really grow and have the tools that they need to be powerful leaders. And that is called Ready to Lead, available on Apple, Spotify. That's a fun one. And I love, that's a playground for me. And I built that with a business partner because I feel like leaders need leaders. We need each other. It can be lonely. It can be difficult. We second guess ourselves. And so that podcast is there with really tangible tools and tips and real world application to become a better leader. So fun stuff.
All right. Well, we will have all that linked up in the show notes. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on, sharing some of your story and journey here with us, and lots of wisdom and golden nuggets. And I appreciate you for hanging tight as we sorted through some of those technical issues at the beginning there, but really enjoyed the conversation.
No problem. Given my software background, I was totally patient with it. I get it. But Michael, thank you for what you're doing and the leadership you're providing for people that are listening. I love it. It's not easy. So thank you for doing what you're doing. It's fabulous.
Thank you.